My name's Rich Pierle, founder and CEO of Pier and former CIO of Becton Dickinson. And I'm here today with my good friend Ergun to talk a little bit about what's going on in IT organizations, AI, transformation, and how do we give some information to companies who are starting this journey or who have been on the journey and want to learn a little bit more about what they need to be doing. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what do we want to know about Ergun?
That's very good. So first of all, great having you. We've had a lot of fun in driving enterprise change together and having impact. My background, for those that don't know me, my name is Ergun Ekici. I am a VP of Emerging Technologies of IPSoft, been here for 20 years. Have been both driving innovation in technology and innovation in organizations in that time, and working with peers like Rich on the most daunting mandate, which is actually changing a living, breathing organization, which is the enterprise.
Yep.
As you know, you and I have had the fun of doing this a few times. And the lesson that we've learned is the pace at which technology has an impact in an organization, or the reach, the level of that impact, has little to do with the technology itself. It's unfortunately largely dictated by the organization's ability to change the corporate culture. Is it a top-down mandate? How is leadership engaging that organizational live stream in driving this type of change? I've personally faced this problem in a number of organizations I've faced, and some have taken the space shuttle and it's gone to the moon, some have taken the space shuttle and it's still in the hangar. So you having obviously had this responsibility at a very large scale at Becton Dickinson and driving change, how would you advise your peers to think about taking on a disruptive, transformative AI change?
Thinking about the situation that we had at BD, I think there's a couple things. We were lucky enough to wrap our change in a larger initiative that the CEO was driving. And this was something that we knew we needed to do. We were, at the time we started, an $8 billion large medical device manufacturer, and we knew, given where healthcare was going, we needed to do things differently. So Vince, really was passionate about, making those changes. And I don't want to say we had a mandate because, at many companies, mandates are they're challenged. But we had a lot of support from senior leadership, and we were able to drive, those changes through many large acquisitions. So we acquired, CareFusion, we acquired CR Bard, and we were able to take, basically 3 companies worth of cultures and bring it together. Underneath that, we had to drive, significant technology change, in the infrastructure, and we had to do things in a different way. So we used the M&A opportunities, which everybody doesn't have, as a way to really accelerate the transformation and obviously bring synergy savings, but carve off some of those savings that we could reinvest in big data, we could reinvest in automation, chatbots, and change really the way that we worked. As part of that, I was also able to pick up shared services, which allowed us to extend IT and shared services and some of those solutions that we were to bring to bear deeper into the organization. And it takes the team. You've got to get the hearts and minds of the people that are working for you. You've got to get the hearts and minds of the CEO, the CFO, but also the business leaders, because as part of that, you are making not incremental changes, but stepwise changes. And they're the whole change curve where you go through I call them the stages of grief, and you get really sad when things are tough, but then eventually you come out of it, and hopefully your organization's in a much better place. And being able to paint that vision, being able to work with senior leaders and get them to buy in, it's really part of the deal. And I think the challenge with a lot of software companies and companies that are really driving that underpinning of those technologies is helping their customers really rally around a vision that they can sell, because people, it doesn't have to be a complicated message, but you really have to get hearts and minds. And if you don't, no transformation is going to be successful. People are going to resist it, and that's one of the key foundational pieces that I think every company really needs to have for this to be successful. And then that's part of what I'm trying to do, is help folks understand what needs to occur, whether it's governance, whether it's getting the stakeholders involved, and companies, whether it's a software company, services providers that have a significant stake, should be part of that process to help do that for their significant customers. I think that's something that I don't think enough customers do with their partners, or enough partners do with their customers.
Yeah, and this is one of the things, again, we've had the fun of experiencing this type of transformation in a number of organizations. And from my observations, as a company starts thinking about, going from marketing, like, member of their board heard about AI, and is coming to CI and say, hey, what's my AI initiative? Without any real substance behind, doesn't even know what he means by that question. What is he actually asking you to deliver as a value to the firm? What problem is he solving? So my first thought goes, okay, you start with the marketing of AI, and everybody finds it sexy. You want to do something with it. To start peeling back the onion. Okay, so what problem are we trying to solve? What role will AI take? Are we talking about analytical AI, which is data analytics, looking at big data and trying to find patterns? What we called big data once upon a time, called big data AI now. It's the same thing. To robotic process automation. Is it really AI? I'll let the marketing decide. But people call robotic process automation AI. To conversational AI. To a machine having a conversation with a human being and solving problems. Each of the AI technologies in enterprise solves a different problem. My strong recommendation to most of the leaders I've met, and unfortunately I didn't have to advise you on this because you were already on the right track, but focus on what problem I'm trying to solve first. Get organizational alignment on what is the outcome we're trying to achieve with AI, and then drive it to a solution. If you're a leader at one of these firms, I wonder, what is the best way to advise a leader on building momentum around a specific topic? How do you get from, okay, we need to have AI, to building consensus around a specific type of solution that you're going to deliver, and then how do you move an organization to actually support that project? Do we do pilots? Is it ground up support? Is it a top-down mandate? You had the opportunity because Beck Dickinson was going through the acquisition cycle to drive change that way.
Right.
But if you're not going through the acquisition cycle and you're almost in a stagnant organization, how do you help them think about driving change in the organization?
So I'm going to take a step back, and we'll get to some of the specifics. So we had a conversation at one of our leadership meetings about blockchain technology, and and it's more, how do we define? Because you're talking about AI. Most leaders, when you say AI, you might as well just say the color blue.
Yeah.
Blue. It doesn't
mean anything.
It doesn't necessarily mean anything.
That's
so
right.
we actually had, I brought in some outside folks, and we had a half-day conversation on blockchain. And we talked about different uses. People understand kind of Bitcoin, but in general, it was like dark magic. What is it? I don't know. So we talked about it. We talked about different applications. And where we came out at the end of the 4 hours was, this isn't something that we see a viable use for our company.
Yeah. It's not relevant to us.
In the near future.
Yeah.
So the whole so the good news is, at the end of the conversation, I didn't have any leaders coming to me and talking about blockchain, because they were informed customers, and they believed there wasn't a relevant use case at that time for the company. So fast forward to some of these other technologies. Whether it's AI, whether it's chatbots, whether it's RPA, you need to make sure your leaders understand what it actually does and what's the benefit to the organization. Because a lot of times IT leaders talk in techno speak, and they think the leaders understand, but they don't. And so you need to kind of get everybody together to the extent that you can. It's not always possible, so that they understand. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the technology piece of it. What they care about is, what's the business outcome?
What can I expect to deliver?
Is this going to improve patient care? Is this going to improve, speed to deliver, an R&D project? What is the business benefit to me? Because they don't really care about any of the technology. No, they don't care. And so the sooner that technology leaders understand that, and most do, right? So to say that they don't, they do.
They should, if they're technology leaders, they should.
Yeah. Back to your question on, what's the right way to deploy, new technologies, new capabilities. What we found at BD, and I've seen this at other companies, is pilots. Find a specific problem, find someone in the organization that's passionate about the problem, who's not an IT person. If it's an IT-led programs, IT-led programs typically fail unless you're truly upgrading the infrastructure.
Unless it's an IT-contained problem.
Unless it's an IT-contained problem. So how do you get a business leader who owns it? Obviously with significant partnership from IT. And so when you have those things, and IT can pay for it, the business can pay for it. A lot of times what I would do is pay for the pilot, and if they were really interested, then they would pay for anything ongoing. And that would tell us if we were successful or not. And that's kind of what you're looking for, is that partnership. If the business isn't there, run away from it.
Yeah.
That's what I would tell you, run away, because it's not going to be successful. Because at the end of the day, the business really dictates and drives it. And IT is a significant support, but they need that engagement. And I think that's where CIOs today are challenged, is how do I build a better relationship with the business so that they have trust and confidence in me to actually deliver, on their most, impactful, technology projects and programs.
No, and this is, I think you hit 2 points in the head that resonate with the experiences that we've seen in big enterprises. First and foremost, we have a friend of ours, Mike Brady. We've worked together for the years.
Sure.
He's, like you, he's had that exciting leadership role in the CTO, CIO, and we've seen the difference Mike has in an organization versus his peers. And what I mean is Mike has been very good at starting to think about, is my job to run infrastructure, or is my job to help the business deliver on their initiatives and then present technology solutions that complement their outcomes they're trying to drive. And any pilot that we did, any application of technology did, even if it was contained within IT, it was about showcasing or evaluating a capability that a business leader was considering as part of their potential roadmap. And in each case, as you said, there was a champion in the business to help evaluate what you're doing. And lack of that, I've seen in other organizations the impact it has. Critical. Another thing is whenever I talk to your peers in the industry, and we talk about all these exciting things about the technology, what it can do, that it's real and it's impactful, it's not some conceptual idea. I always end the point by saying, look, the technology will work. I know it will. Despite knowing that, I would not advise any company to start this journey unless it's a mandate, like top 3 priority for the organization or for a business. If it's important to the business or it's important to the organization, take it on. If it's not, these type of technologies are so disruptive that you can get bogged down in trying to drive change on the ground. And there'll be so much resistance that if it's not set as a priority, if it's not set as a clear direction on the top, you won't be able to have the impact that you're looking for.
Yeah, the one thing I would caution you is you always want to make progress. So everybody's familiar with large ERP implementations. And we've got a mindset around it's okay to do a big ERP implementation. But I would tell you we need to rethink that. And we need to find a way to do things smaller with new technologies. And
faster cycles, maybe.
Faster cycles, and again, we're not gonna get into the whole agile conversation, but how do you do some meaningful, impactful things with new technologies quickly so that it doesn't become a barrier to just not doing anything? And this is where I worry, because I think the new technologies, the new whatever it is needed in the organization, and if they don't try it, and get comfortable, you'll never move off some of the legacy technologies. And the business wants the new stuff.
And then big ERP projects are barrier to entry. Nobody wants to go
They
through
want
it.
mobile. They want more information about
They
their
want a
customers.
virtual agent. They
Yeah.
want data analytics. They want to be able to predictive
Absolutely.
decision making. I completely understand, and I think that. So this is interesting because I've seen in the AI markets, and we've been in this market for longer than most. So the more maturity around it. We're not a 2-year-old AI company. I've seen that shift in the organization. Let me explain what I mean. When we started delivering AI not as a service but as a technology,
Right.
we found that a lot of our initial pilots were organizations doing pilots for pilot's sake, not a pilot to make a meaningful business decision out of, but a pilot to just try to figure out what it is, almost test the waters. That really didn't translate into outcomes. I have seen a bit of change in the market in the recent years. I have seen now in the last year or two, it's not pilots for pilot's sake anymore. But organizations now have enough understanding of technology, they're starting to do pilots for a specific outcome. I think that's one of the things you'd guide an organization around. Like, how do you organize a pilot? How do you set objectives for what you're going to do so that you're enabled to make a decision coming out of that pilot? There's no point in doing a pilot unless you have something to drive towards.
I think it depends a little bit on the organization. So every company that I've ever worked at or consulted for has a totally different culture. Some are totally business case driven. Some it's more of I would call it a social business case. And initially at BD, what we were doing was, I would call it a little bit of targeted fishing. We knew certain areas of the organization that had some challenges. My guys were going out trying to create interest in some of these new capabilities. And our goal was to flip from fishing into really driving real business cases. So something that was going to produce revenue, something that was going to decrease cost. But initially, part of the key was not to set very low expectations on whether it was going to save. Where I've seen leaders not be as successful as where they said, oh, this is going to save 40%. It's probably not. Even with some of the RPA that we were putting in, it was saving arms and legs. What it was actually doing was improving cycle time. We improved a lot of cycle time. We took a lot of manual steps out of processes, and we were able to actually, in the shared service center, use the same level of workforce, but take on more work from other parts of the organization. And so we said, doing more for the same. And getting that marketing and that vision with the organization and setting the bar at the appropriate level so that's not, because if success breeds more work, right? Failure breeds no work. And so how do you kind of keep the momentum going, and also engage your organization? I think people a lot of times worry about, oh my gosh, we're gonna impact a lot of our labor. We were, in some of the markets, we were having challenges bringing on the people, the requisite skill set. So this ability to be able to augment our workforce, keep the same people, and actually have them doing higher value work was huge for us, because we had, I'm thinking of some of the folks that we had in Santiago, Chile, some really amazing people and what they're doing. And now that they've got some of these technologies, they're able to do a lot more higher value work and provide more benefit to the region. So it's thinking about some of those models and how do you apply it, across your organization.
Right. And maybe, as you said, take into account what's effective in your organization. Is it a Excel business case? Is it a social business case? What type of outcomes you align to? But whatever it is, it has to be something that you're going to know what you're going to achieve.
The other thing, it kind of ties in, these successes are never IT successes. In that example in Chile, it was a Latin America region success, right? Because the region manager took the bat along with the CFO for the region. And they made it work. Because if it wasn't for them, it wouldn't have gotten off the ground.
You'd have another technology installed without an outcome.
And where we had successes in Asia, it was the Greater Asia region manager. It was his success and his team's success.
And we were almost the engine room guys in the back supporting that leadership.
But when that works, that's how it should be, right? Everybody wins. And then we get to do more work. We get to help them provide more
gain
value.
more trust for the business as well, more
Yeah,
engagement.
trust is huge.
As you rightly point out, pilots, especially in the modern day, are a very agile way,
Sure.
just to use the word, of driving, introducing new capabilities into an organization. I think conceptually we understand, but I think it might be useful for us to, take the layers off that onion a bit. When we think about a pilot, how do we put together technology, business owner, and the problem, and set an outcome that we desire so that we can actually organize it into something that's a meaningful executable project. I know you've had a few recent experiences on these. Is there anything you would share from those?
Yeah, so I mean, there's probably 3 different pilots involving all slightly different technologies. The first one was with IPSoft, and this was, we'll call it IT on IT violence, because I was able to manage it within the IT organization. So I was ultimately the business owner on this one. And our business problem was, it started with our cycle time. Somebody would come in to our one of our offices, they'd need guest Wi-Fi access, they'd send an email to an admin, and 2 days later they would get access. Well, oh, by the way, 2 days later the person didn't need it anymore because they'd come and they'd left. And so our ability to turn around guest Wi-Fi access was poor, right? And I'm being probably kind. So what we did was we said, you know what, this feels like a good use case for Amelia. And so what we did was we trained her up, we connected it in through our Active Directory, which was key to actually make it. And so we turned 2 days into about 10 seconds. And over time, as we trained and got Amelia up to speed in our process, and oh, by the way, we found a lot out about our process and how many different forks in the process there were that we didn't understand totally. We were able to have Amelia basically close about 90+% of all the guest Wi-Fi access, right? A lot of the ones that weren't were not even appropriate. So that was a real good example where we were able to move work, and over time we extended that model to get guest badge access, right? So we were connecting it into the badging, the guest badging system. So that was one where I think we got a lot of value, and it was a good initial case because we could manage it within IT. Another example of one with one of our business units, and again, this is not an IPSoft related one, but this is one where we used RPA tools to bring information off of our manufacturing shop floor and dump this down into a data lake where we could actually now propose on some of the different tenders in markets. So this opened up about $3 to $5 million worth of revenue for one of our businesses that we were previously unable to get because we couldn't pull the information. And so now we had regular feeds of information coming off our manufacturing sites so that we could push it back to the government agencies, and they won the work. So this was strong partnership between a business unit, obviously they get the win, and my team. And again, it's a good example of IT
enabling a business.
And another example, we were asked to help one of our businesses bring surgical information because hospitals, one of their biggest challenges, healthcare acquired infection or hospital acquired infections, and so we were looking at all of the surgical trays in days of the week, and we could pinpoint which trays were not able, or were creating these HAIs, and be able to feed that information back to the hospital. So anymore, it's not just about having kind of one mode of technology. In my mind, you need RPA, you need AI, you need machine learning, you need all of these things working together in your what I would call your digital ecosystem, right? And how do you architect that? And that was one of the reasons why I founded Pier Digital, because I wasn't really getting support for people who kind of been there and done that, because at this point nobody's really been there and done that. and started to cobble these things together and make it work for an organization. And I think that's some of the value that we have in looking at these things. And again, still a lot of experimentation going out there, and it's an exciting time. It's really exciting time to be in this marketplace and working with smart folks like yourself and organizations who really want to help companies solve their most challenging problems.
No, and I think you hit a point that I've observed quite a bit in the market, and it's something that I've been reflecting on, is there is no such thing as continued education for a CIO.
No.
Right? You become a CIO, and it's like you should already know everything.
Yeah.
Because you got to that role by being obviously very capable in your industry, but your challenge is now you're a CIO of a multi-billion-dollar organization, but the world keeps changing. So how as a CIO do you now learn how to apply an AI technology when 10 years ago that wasn't the skill set that brought you to that role? How does a CIO continue to develop his skill sets and not each find the same mistakes and apply them themselves and learn from them, but learn from a forum where they can either have a continued education program or have a peer or a consultative entity that can help them through that process? I do think that's a strong gap I see this, especially as today the rate of change keeps increasing.
Oh yeah.
So the challenge for a CIO to continue to maintain that curve of education.
Well, and it's not just the cool. So we're talking about the
fun
cool,
stuff.
About the fun stuff.
That's true. That's true.
The other part of it is you've got to deal with privacy. You've got to deal with compliance. You've got to.
You have social media now. Congratulations.
You've got to deal with information security and all the bad actors out there. So and you want to keep the back office running, and your collaboration tools aren't necessarily delivering what they need for the organization. So you've got all of those things, and in no CIO, we're trained, not to whine, but secretly in the backs of our minds, we're like, oh my gosh, right? Does anybody really understand
like what's
going on out there? Oh, by the way, make sure that ERP gets delivered on time with zero impact to the organization, and any other program.
Keep the lights on while trying to figure out how to drive innovation. And by the way, of all the hundreds of companies that sprouted up, which one is real, practically, tangibly relevant to your organization?
Yeah. So,
I don't envy the challenges the CIO faces today.
None of them are bored. Right? What's the curse?
May you live in interesting times.
May you live in interesting times.
Yes, and I suspect our CIOs today live in very
absolutely
interesting times. I miss the days of torturing you while you were a CIO.
Yeah,
I look forward to the next time I can torture you like this. With that said, I think we've touched on the challenges they face. When I think about then, how do you translate positive success? Or even any project implementation, I've distilled it down to three, I think, criteria are critical to me to think about.
Okay.
And I'd like your perspective on them. And what would you say, Ergun, maybe add a layer to that. So when I think about any project, I look at it very simple. I'm talking typically about, obviously, AI and the areas that we're focused on, the fun stuff.
Right.
As you say. First and foremost, whatever problem you're trying to solve, it has to be high enough volume to be meaningful to the business, right? Whatever your problem you're trying to solve, demonstrate technology, if you pick something so off the beaten path, so rare in occurrence that nobody's going to listen, there's going to be no value. So obviously there has to be a tangible volume. Great, got it. Then it has to be a value. So not only addressing a problem that's at a high enough volume, it's high enough value, but it means to me, typically for AI, this is a very important mandate, is that you go from AI that is probabilistic, to action. The role of technology you bring in, whether it's IPA, whether it's conversational AI or a different solution, that it is actually taking a material action that deflects work from a human being, that actually helps that human being do more because they're not have to do that same task anymore.
Sure.
If I'm only doing informational work, then am I really helping drive efficiency for that human being? Am I really helping them be more effective? Are there other things you would look at to complement things to say what makes a good project? You pass a sniff test and say, yeah, this is something we should consider a good starting point for applying a new technology.
So my initial response, I'm going to go in a little bit different direction, but I'll get back there.
Please.
Right? And the different direction is What I used to do with my business leaders is I would meet with them. Well, it could be quarterly, once a quarter. It could be once a month. If I had a lot going on, it could be weekly. And so each leader had a different level of trust for the IT organization.
Sure.
And I'll characterize that trust by what they would allow us to do with them. One leader was limited to fix my wireless access points in my buildings. If you can do that simple task, which may or may not be so simple, then maybe I'll do some more stuff with you. So, again, I like to use Maslow's hierarchy of needs. AI, for most business leaders, is up there with spirituality and self-actualization. And so if you can't take care of their laptops, if you can't provision and do those things effectively, guess what?
Food, shelter,
Guess
those
what?
needs,
You're not going to be having an AI conversation with them.
Yeah,
You've got to take care of the fundamentals. And with some leaders, they understood you may not be perfect on some of the fundamentals, and these were what I would call the more progressive ones. They were willing to take a gamble.
Because
so
still there's potential with.
So, but again, you've got to really work those, and you've got to make a physical presence as a CIO. So there's only so many hours in the day. So you've got to figure out where you're going to invest your time as you go after these things. Because if you're not willing to invest your time, then you shouldn't do it. And so, back to your question around AI, it's making sure that when you do those few projects, because you're not going to get many swings at the bat for these things, that you're focused on it personally, and that you have the support and buy-in. It comes back to support and buy-in from the business leader. Because if you're not connected there, it will fail, you will fail, and the business will be unhappy with you. And that's a...
They have to become a part of it.
That shortens the livelihood of, or the
lifespan.
The life expectancy of a CIO.
Is it more than 3 years these days?
I still think it's hovering around 24 to 36 months. So I'm above the Mendoza line.
Yeah, you're way past that. Well, you're an old man in CIO years right now.
There was a post last week that talked about shared services organizations. So what happens is when a company opens up a new shared service center in Poland, in Malaysia, wherever, you have instances where people will poach the employees from one center to another.
Oh, interesting.
It's pretty common, and so it was a point of conversation, and we were talking about, well, it's difficult to poach digital employees, and so what are other strategies around bringing up shared service centers where that's part of the overall service delivery model and strategy, and that's one of the things that we tried to do is find that blend of skilled knowledge workers in the center that understand local customs and regulations with could be bots. It could be what I would call true digital workers, which you can help us differentiate between a digital worker and a bot, because I think that's something important for people to understand a little bit better. But how do we think about having an integrated service delivery model in shared services in IT between digital workers, bots, and the skilled workforce?
It's almost becoming an HR question, isn't it? How does the HR organization of tomorrow train employees to work with their digital colleagues?
Right.
Because you actually have a digital colleague as your peer employee that you work with in the business process, and there's some way you have to be able to interact with them. And it's a thinking of that. We've been thinking about, and I know you've seen it. We've rolled out first digital workforce.ai, where we've started to expose digital employees directly downloadable from the cloud.
Right.
One of our client executives, leader of a French investment bank, called it cloud shoring.
Right. I like that word.
Instead of onshoring, offshoring, nearshoring, cloud shoring. Can I get my next digital employee from the cloud?
It's almost like my employees are from Neverwhere.
Exactly. And when you think about your cloud shore digital employee, the way the way Gartner talks about it, calls them knowledge workers.
Knowledge workers, okay.
So bots typically take on an individual segment of a process, while the knowledge worker, a digital employee that's a knowledge worker, actually understands the business, takes on the capacity of a human engineer in being a banker, being an insurance agent, being an IT service desk engineer, or whatever.
But how can you do what I do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, Ergun.
I'm trying. It's going to be a little bit longer of a process, but what it has done, like, look at what technology has done over the years.
Right.
It's always about elevating your employees to be able to add more value individually. You don't replace people. The reality of it is you've actually allowed the same skill sets, the same people that have the same abilities to actually deliver a higher value function within the organization. And that's what the role of digital employees are, is to complement the people in the organization so you can deliver more and more. And believe it or not, you could still do more. I know it's hard to imagine, but there is, and that would be the role of your digital colleague.
And what we found in the centers was that, you know, those associates who actually embraced it, a lot of the work that was being, you know, automated or digitized was stuff they didn't like doing anyways, and they could focus
It
on
improved
the higher value and actually
job satisfaction improvement, right?
improved the relationship with the organization because they're able to do more, I would say, problem-solving work.
Things they enjoy more, apply human intelligence. I mean, this is, you think of, you know, if I just talk about a simple difference between a digital employee and you know, if I ask you to do the same thing 1,000 times, exactly the same way over and over, I am guaranteeing you will not be able to do it. You will have variance.
Yep.
But that same variance is how you drive creativity.
That's right.
Human variance allows us to solve problems that we've never seen before because we will think of new ways of doing things. Think of your digital employee as taking on the rote, the well understood, the repeatable.
Right.
While you are applying your intelligence to help keep solving the new problems, help driving needle forward
Makes
in
sense.
the role. But as I said, I do wonder what the CHRO role will look like a decade from now, and how the CRHO thinks about balancing a workflow so that maybe it's almost 50% digital and 50% is human.
Could be.
And they have to collaborate and work together. Chetan, you've met him, our CEO, has put a line in the sand.
Yeah.
And I'd like to get your perspective. He says that, you know, within a decade, you'll be walking down a hall at a big enterprise like this, and you won't be able to tell if the person walking next to you is a machine or human.
Well, I don't know.
Is it a little too ambitious for you?
I think they're going to be walking the virtual pathways. I don't know if they're going to be
not the physical ones yet.
I don't know if we're ready.
So not
for
Westworld,
for Westworld or Terminator. So Ergun, we talked a lot about, you know, many different things, and so trying to put a bow on it. The technology's all over the place. You've got cloud, you've got AI, you've got software providers, you've got hardware, you've got you name it, and it's a situation right now where there's really no wrong answer. There also may not be a right answer,
to be determined.
Organizations are really going to have to kind of weigh what they're doing from a technology standpoint, what they're doing from a human capital standpoint, because I think that's an important point that we've talked about, and how does it all work together. And I think part of, you know, getting it to work together is making sure, you know, that you've got connections with people who have been there and done that. You know, whether it's a trusted technology partner or a consulting partner. I think you know both of us have experience, and I definitely would welcome the conversation with organizations that are looking at this. So
I couldn't agree with you more. I think we're at a unique position where you can bring two healthy perspectives on a challenge most organizations are facing, and I do think it's challenging. Right? People trying to drive this mandate have to understand how to drive the organization, but really they need help peeling that onion back, layers of the onion. What is it that we're trying to solve?
Right.
What is the technology actually able to do?
Right.
As opposed to the promise of AI, what is the reality of AI? And to be able to truly get into those details, you need a trusted partner. You're not going, this is not a sales exercise, this is not a marketing exercise. You actually want to try to decouple all the marketing and focus on the reality of the solutions themselves and how they apply. And this is where I typically look for, we need our client to be our partner, because they have to guide us as to what are the things that are their priority. What are the problems that they're trying to solve? What's keeping them up at night? Because that should drive the initiatives.
Absolutely.
Not the technologist, it's not the consultant. We're there to help.
Right.
We're the injury room guys in the back,
Right.
turning the wheel to help them move forward, but they have to set the course.
Yeah.
Where are
Absolutely.
we going? What are we trying to achieve? What is the outcome that we're driving towards? So having the right partner in the organization, I think, is the first mandate. And then where that partner is ready for taking our challenge and could use some support, I think we'd be happy to help.
No, absolutely. No, couldn't agree more. So thank you very much for having me today. I appreciate the conversation. And
It's a pleasure as always,
yeah,
sir.
absolutely. Thank you.